The next few years will be quite interesting for emerging markets, not just China, but the emerging markets in the wider Asia region, in particular in Southeast Asia. The economic profiles of emerging market countries varies considerably. So you have some which are very, very export-led, export-driven, very open economies. Malaysia, for example, would sit in that camp. But there are other emerging markets which are not export-led at all, that rely much more on domestic consumption. And countries such as Indonesia would fall into that camp. So there is going to be a mixed outlook, if you like, for the emerging market economies. I think on the whole, we are seeing a slight slowdown in China, but it's very much a soft landing rather than a hard landing. And let's not forget that most emerging markets in Southeast Asia, they export and rely on Chinese growth. So any dampening of Chinese growth will trickle through. But at the moment, although we're going to see a slight reduction, if you like, in Chinese growth, it's going to be very much a soft rather than a hard landing. But for emerging markets, it is a mixed picture, but I think on the whole, we will see a slowdown in growth, but nevertheless, we will still see growth. Well, the main issues that are taking place in China at the moment, we've just completed the third plenum of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. That took place at the beginning of November, and a series of financial reforms were announced during that meeting. There were quite a number of major new developments and a push towards greater marketization in China. Now, Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, his new mantra, the Chinese dream, is essentially economic liberalization or economic modernization coupled with Chinese nationalism. Turning now to the political outlook for the next 12 months, we're expecting two major elections in the Asia region, in India and in Indonesia. And both actually have similar economic issues to deal with, mainly the current account deficit, which is exacerbated by fuel price subsidies both in India and in Indonesia. Now, the government, to address this, needs to cut down on their fuel subsidies. That's obviously politically very, very difficult to do. And with both countries going into a general election next year, it makes it harder to take that course of action. So we're probably not going to see concrete reform steps until after the elections have taken place next year. So the UK is renewing its commercial ties with many countries in Asia, in particular with China. And we've just seen a visit by David Cameron leading the largest ever trade delegation from the UK to China. Now, a number of important announcements have been made during that visit, not least the announcement that Standard Chartered Bank will partner with the Agricultural Bank of China in offering offshore renminbi clearing facilities in London. Now, that's a very, very important step in London's ambitions to becoming a major global offshore RMB hub. Our focus as a global communications consultancy in the Asia-Pacific region, we're seeing a renewed interest in integrated communications programs in the region as corporates in the UK, in the rest of Europe, and in the US are looking to benefit from the growth that's taking place in Asia, albeit slightly more subdued growth, but it's still growth. Looking to capitalize on that. We are seeing a lot of companies now focusing more and more on the Asia-Pacific region and renewing and reviewing their communication strategies, not just their government relations strategies, but also their corporate communication strategies, how they deal with not just the English language press in the international centers of Singapore and Hong Kong, but also how they engage and work with local markets, local language press in other markets in the region. So we're seeing a much more comprehensive approach being taken by many corporates to their communication strategies in the Asia-Pacific region.